Obviously, a months and teachers having to adapt and learn how to teach these students virtually. Well, one of those states that was mentioned in there was California. I'm going to bring in Fox 11's Phil Shuman. Phil, what's the latest on reopening out there? Is it going to happen anytime soon?
Well, the short answer is no. There's an ongoing battle, if you will, between school administrators and teachers' unions. And here in Los Angeles, at least, the second largest school district in the country with some 700,000 students, teachers are simply saying that they don't feel it's safe to go back into the classrooms until they're vaccinated. And according to the tier system that's been set up here, there's no timetable to start vaccinating teachers or any other school employees just yet.
So let's dive a little deeper into this because it gets a little confusing county by county, city by city. Some cities are back in school.
Right.
Los Angeles, though, is not, correct?
Correct. And Los Angeles hasn't had school in session for almost a year now. And what they're saying when it comes to elementary schools, there's a differentiation in the state guidelines by the California Department of Health between K through 6 and then the secondary schools. And right now, what they're saying is that in order for schools to reopen elementary schools, they want the number of new cases to be below 25 per 100,000 of population. And right now that number is about 38 per 100,000 of population. So they're not anywhere close. And the teachers union is saying, not only do we want vaccines, but there are a number of other safety precautions we are talking about, most of which the school district has met. We're talking about things like rearranging the physical layout of the classroom for social distancing, PPEs, filtration, masks. So all of these things, there's some agreement on, and they've spent billions on this, but it's the vaccine that is the sticking point, and also the level of new COVID cases according to the state guidelines.
Now, I find this really interesting. We just did an interview last week about the city of San Francisco suing its own school district. Right. What is the city saying in contrast to the school district in Los Angeles?
Well, one Los Angeles City Councilman, Joe Buscaino, and there are 15 members of the Los Angeles City Council. One member has proposed suing the school district, a similar move to what San Francisco did last week, although as you've been reporting, that seems to have been resolved. The school superintendent here, Austin Butner, called that a political stunt and said that was counterproductive, and Buscaino hasn't really received much support for that. Instead, it's really ongoing negotiations between the LA Unified School District and what's called UTLA, United Teachers Los Angeles, which is the teachers union. Meantime, everyone agrees that students need to get back in the classroom, that remote learning is not working, that students are suffering, there are mental health issues, there are obviously academic issues, and every day that goes by, they're getting further and further behind, yet they're not able to resolve this issue of how we get teachers to agree to get back into the classroom. Despite last week's opinion by the new director of the CDC that vaccinations aren't required, despite the consensus from the American Academy of Pediatrics, teachers are saying Los Angeles is different. As you know, it's been the so-called epicenter of COVID-19. 90% or so of the students are of color. They represent very hard-hit areas. So LAUSD and the teachers union agree that you really can't directly compare the scenario here in Los Angeles with other school districts in the state or the country.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild to hear because even today we had Dr. Fauci saying that it's safe for schools to reopen. What's the opposition like from teachers and students in Los Angeles who are seeing all of these other states reopen and there's no clear future for them?
Well, look, everybody agrees that the goal is to reopen schools as soon as safely possible. The disagreement is over what's considered safe, what's considered a tolerable risk. I mean, you never eliminate all risk, of course, whether it's opening schools or reopening restaurants or reopening malls. But the teachers union is fairly unanimous on this, is that they do not feel that without vaccinations that it's safe to go back into the classroom. And the way the vaccination systems are set up here, it's healthcare workers and those who are 65 and older that are eligible for the vaccine right now. As we know, there's not enough vaccines to go around, so it's a bit of a standoff, to be honest.
Yeah. We saw the vaccination site today, Petco Park, being opened at this point. And
Right.
Alex Michelson, your colleague there at Fox 11, asked a question to Newsom talking about schools reopening and a timeline for that. And Newsom said that it's a sense of fear and trust. That's what they're weighing this out on.
Right.
And exactly what you said, if they can safely reopen. So.
Right. Well, his question was, what's the biggest obstacle to reopening schools? And Governor Newsom's answer was fear of catching the COVID-19, of course, and trust in the school district and the public health departments that they've done everything they can to mitigate the risks. LAUSD Superintendent Austin Butner put out a long list of things they've done today in terms of filtration systems, sanitation plans, testing and tracing, social distancing, and other things which they believe has set up a very safe environment. The science has generally agreed that COVID transmission is unlikely among young people, elementary school students. It's typically adult-to-adult transmission outside of a school environment that's set up to be very safe. So this is just a huge, controversial, emotional issue with students essentially caught in the middle of it all, with no answers on the horizon anytime soon.
Yeah. All right. Any last thoughts, Phil?
Well, really, it's up to these teachers to come to a consensus among themselves of when they feel it's safe enough to go back into the classroom. If you're a teacher and you don't feel it's safe and you feel you're putting your life at risk by going back into a classroom, then what more can you say to that individual? You can't force them to change their mind, right?
Yeah, it's such a tough situation. You put it in perfect terms. The kids are getting stuck in between all of it and definitely missing out on some socialization and being in school. But it's about safety at this point in time, and we can't forget that. The pandemic is not over. Well, Fox 11's Phil Shuman out there in Los Angeles. Phil, thank you so much for being with us here on News Now and breaking it all down.
Okay, thanks, Daytona.
So great information there, and we're going to keep following all of these stories in California, in New York, and all states that everyone kind of has their